Alright, ladies and gentlemen, if you saw the last video, you know that this is a 4-part series. And the first part was stealing from Walmart. The second part, this video, is being arrested. That's why there's these appropriately themed lights. So let's start off where we ended last video. My mom grounded me for a month. Well, that didn't really work out because she worked a couple of hours later than I got off of school. So I was able to hang out with my friend for a couple of hours, come back home, and then convince her that I was in the house the whole time. So one of those days, I went and hung out with my 2 friends. Me and my other friend got bored and decided to walk over to this store because my other friend didn't want to. He was too lazy. So we walked over to this store that was right next to the Walmart that I stole from. So we were right next to this field that I hid the cards, and I made a joke to my buddy. I was like, dude, imagine if me and you were able to find those cards when those 5 other police officers couldn't. I was like, wouldn't that be just like funny as hell? And he's like, oh yeah, that would be pretty funny. And so we jokingly started looking around. We weren't really taking it seriously, but after looking around for probably about 5 minutes, I see a glimmer because the sun hit a piece of metal just right that it glimmered right in my eye. And I looked over and I could see the glimmer, and I'm like, no, don't tell me. Do not tell me that me and these 5 cops were looking for an hour to try and find these boxes, and me and my jackass buddy found it after joking around for 5 minutes. And so I walk up to it, and sure enough, there it was, about 6 or 7 tins of these $20 boxes. And I was like, holy shit, dude, we found it. So my buddy takes it and brings it back to his place, and our plan was that we were gonna sell it after I get off of groundation. So right after I got off of groundation, him and I go to this card shop, and we walk in there. We tell the guys, we're like, hey, we got these cards right here. And they're like, oh yeah, that's cool and all that. He's like, hey, you know what? We have a buddy that kind of specializes in those sort of cards. Here, let me call him up real quick. You know, you guys could just wait for him. We're like, yeah, okay. And as long as we're getting more money from it, we sit there joking around for probably about 30 minutes. And then all of a sudden, here comes the 2 officers that almost arrested me at Walmart come walking through the door. And the first thought I had was, and my buddy just kind of looks at me because he knew that he was screwed. And so these 2 officers walk up to us and are like, gentlemen, what are we doing here? And I'm like, oh, you know, officer, I'm just trying to sell those cards that I stole. And he's like, yeah, man, I could see that. So you found the cards alright, huh? Oh, this officer's filling out all this paperwork for both of us. And he asked my buddy what his birthday was. He says like some date. I forgot what it was. And then he's like, oh, no, like, I'm sorry, it's this date. Right after the officer wrote it down. And he looks at us, slams his fist on the table, says, hey man, I ain't messing around no more, man. This ain't no joke. And I'm like, hey man, calm down. He just forgot his birthday. That's all it was. He's like, you, shut the hell up. I'm like, god damn, shit. So eventually, we get split up between these 2 officers. My buddy and the one jackass officer that exploded on us go outside. And then me and this other officer stay inside. He said, Jacob, man, what's the deal? I'm like, look, dude, he had nothing to do with it. And looks at me and says, so you're really gonna admit to all charges? I'm like, yeah. He had nothing to do with it. He says, look man, you realize this has some trafficking charges to it, because in total with the cards that I had and the cards that we found in the field, it was over $200 worth of cards that my buddy had put in his backpack and brought over to the store. So technically it was trafficking stolen goods. I'm like, yeah, that was all me. And so the officers are like, alright man, if that's your story man, if you're gonna stick to that. And so pretty much right then and there, I was arrested and my buddy was let free. Now that's all I could say for this story without spoiling a crucial piece of information that you'll see in part 4 as I'm being arrested. And that's about a crooked officer. So this officer does something wrong while he's arresting me. And you guys will see what that is in part 4. Until next time.